Good morning and welcome to the old school on a rainy Saturday, although perhaps it's clearing up. I am joined by my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, Dr. Bourgeois.
Hello, Mr. Miller. It's good to see you today, and I love the rain.
Yes, you're from Oregon. I guess this is right in your wheelhouse.
It is, and it washes memories off the sidewalks of life. Um,
That's quite poetic. You should write that down somewhere.
well, I'm stealing it from Woody Allen, as I do about 90% of my jokes around here.
Well, our podcast typically covers all matter of things, primarily education, but we do get into other topics as we will today. But the first thing I have before we get to that is a matter of national importance.
You mean personal importance?
National
Oh,
importance
okay.
happening in our very neighborhood.
I reminded myself of Ed McMahon there a little bit.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's a horrible Ed McMahon impersonation, but since most of our listeners are probably too young to remember Ed McMahon anyway, maybe it doesn't matter.
I thought it was spot on here, Miller.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do you know what an egret is?
An egress?
Egret.
Egret.
Yes.
I clearly, I digress. Is it like an animal or something?
It is of sorts. It's a bird,
Oh, okay. There you go. I nailed it.
more or less. Yes. More or less than more, but okay. Yes. It's a
Okay.
bird, and it's a bird that at one time was endangered. And because it was endangered, various laws were put in place at the national level to protect this bird. Now, in the greatest hopes of the lawmakers who put this piece of legislation together, the egrets have since thrived and grown in population. However, the laws have not changed to match this new reality. What was once endangered now is no longer, but the law exists and continues to exist. Now, I bring all this up lest you think this is the musings of a older man who has not had enough sleep. But several, about a half a block down from where we live, a I don't know what a school, a flock of egrets have made their home at the top of the trees in front of the front lawn of this one particular house. The problem is, this is not just mom, dad, and the kids nesting up there, but rather mom, dad, the kids, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents. You have a full flock of egrets that have nested themselves on the top canopy level of these trees. What that does is that for an area that encompasses about 7 to 10 houses, you have an extraordinary amount of foliage debris, and you also have a whole bunch of bird crap. Not
On your
only that,
house?
yes.
Are they on your house? You're in that
No, no,
in
no,
the
no, no, no. Not my house. This is further
oh
down the way
okay. So you're a concerned citizen.
of sorts.
Okay.
And so not only that, but these things are flying all over the place and they fly down at street level. Now, I don't know if the egrets know the concept of a automobile, but they could very easily get hit depending upon how they fly and when they fly. To make matters worse, the homeowners don't have an immediate recourse to follow to deal with these egrets because, according to national law, federal law, there is a $50,000 fine for anybody who messes with the nest, particularly if they have eggs in them, of egrets. And so you have about, like I said, an area that covers about 7 to 10 houses. They are now captive to this law and to these birds, which when you see them as you drive by a swamp or a lake, you say to yourself, wow, what a pretty bird. But if they are nesting in a tree in your front yard, well, that's a whole different can of worms, so to speak.
So if they nest on your porch, I mean, we actually have a duck with like 15 eggs about to hatch in a pod on our front porch. You're saying if they were egrets, we could be fined $50,000 for taking their eggs.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated because egrets' nests are always solely up at the top of the tree level.
Okay.
And so, because of that, it makes it problematic, one, to deal with. I remember a couple of days ago, I saw about 5 animal control um, trucks and about 10 people from animal control just basically standing in the middle of the street looking upwards. So, I don't know what to do. I don't know what they're supposed to do. I don't have to worry about it. Although, what I am going to do is we are getting a call tomorrow from somebody who's going to trim our trees severely to prevent the possibility of egrets migrating over to my neck of the woods,
I see. A preemptive strike.
as it were. Sure.
So what's the question? You want to repeal the law and get a 2/3 vote of Congress, or what's your plan here?
I'm simply bringing up a problematic situation that is caused secondarily caused by an outdated piece of legislation. Now, I don't know what the homeowners can do. My thought is, well, it's not my thought. My prediction is, because I'm certainly not suggesting that anybody do this. My thought is that somebody will take matters into their own hands at some point.
And start shooting.
You know, if they do, I'm not certainly I'm not suggesting this. That would be
Well, you are.
irresponsible.
You're intimating, and it's kind of a wink, wink. You're asking for a gathering of egress is called a colony or a rookery. There you go. So you're talking about a rookery of egresses.
Egrets, not
Of,
egresses.
so what's the plural? Egret
Egreti.
and the egret. They're okay. So egrets, the plural. And if they were above your house, let's make it a hypothetical. What would you do in this situation? You're being quiet because it could. I mean, it's not that far from you. You may actually have to make this decision, and you sound like a mafia person now, where you don't talk. What are you gonna do?
What it's gonna do? Things happen. Birds die every day.
It's gone. They're gone. I say,
Leave the gun, keep the cannolis.
gosh,
I'm not saying I would hurt a bird. I don't believe in hurting animals.
well, you could scare them away. Or,
I would certainly do my best. I think there's you have those things like that emit god awful noises that only
huh?
birds can hear, or
It's
something
really,
along those lines.
is that legal? Would you get thrown down with 50,000 for making loud pitched noise?
I can't see how that would be illegal.
No. So
I could be wrong, but
that's your solution. You get a good old fashioned hi-fi system, and you do your homework on what frequency drives them crazy. And as soon as the egrets are in position, you let them have it.
either sound assaults or panther urine or whatever else you got to use to drive off egrets.
Yeah.
Rookery.
Well, I looked on the internet. You can find things like that.
Huh.
I really
All
want to
right.
know how to say it, and I still mispronounced it. Um, but you could also just people could just behave in boorish behavior, and they would just leave out of disgust. You know,
They could. You could also just ask them to stay.
That's all you need to do is ask me to stay. Well, stick around.
Just stick around. Just ask me to stick around. God bless Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But anyway, so that's the current situation here at the homestead. Thankfully, not directly at the homestead, but a little bit further down the way. But every time I drive past there, I mean, it looks god awful. And those neighbors, those people, they're out there pressure hosing their sidewalks to get the bird crap off. They are sweeping up all the debris from the trees because those things are just crazy up there. So it's not good.
Sounds like a great news story. Some crack reporter could come out there and interview them, interview the birds, for God's sake, find out what's really happening there, get to the bottom of it.
Listen, this wasn't my idea. I just moved here. My brother moved here. He said there's plenty of room. I'm not sure why the egrets sound like they're from Jersey, but
Well, so what a start to the podcast, and I was hoping it was like a parable or something that would connect to anything else that we have to say, but it sounds like a non sequitur example, unless you had a broader picture here happening.
I have no broader picture except slightly broader in that today we're going to talk about something that I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, that we have not discussed before. And we have discussed it in small snippets as part of larger conversations. But today's topic is Texas.
Taxes? You said taxes?
Texas.
Texas.
Yes.
Okay.
So, anyway, so what I thought we'd do is that, both of us have had our coming to Texas story. You've spoken about yours as being recruited by a German teacher to teach German in Fort Worth. And you stayed here because of the Mexican food. Is that right?
I came because of the waters.
I was actually born in Texas. I was born in Longview, Texas.
Longview, Texas.
Longview is out east. And I think I've said it on this podcast before. For 3 hours, I was the largest baby born at Good Shepherd Hospital in Longview, Texas. I held the record. I
For
was
3 hours.
I was 10 pounds, 9 ounces. And then
Okay.
about 3 hours later, some old gal clocked in at about 13 plus.
Yeah.
And there goes my record. But for 3 hours, I had the record. So
You were
anyway.
the greatest pilot anyone had ever seen.
But anyway, so I was raised in Maryland and I came back here. A friend of mine suggested there was plenty of teaching jobs. And so I came down to see for myself and I have not left. But as far as like Texas goes, Texas is it's a mythological state. It has almost mythological proportions to it. Anytime you go to another country, I think most other states, you could not say you're from that state and they would know what you're talking about. Obvious exceptions being New York or California. But you mentioned Texas, and it just comes with its own kind of set knowledge. Some of it true, some of it not true. So we live in a state that has a uniqueness to it compared to other US states. So what I thought I'd do is I'd ask us 5 questions and that each of us would take turns kind of answering it. That's meant to kind of touch on some aspect of Texas or another. Sound good?
It sounds like there's a lot of pressure on
No.
the recipients of these questions, and I'm going to say little snarky answers. I expect, but we'll see. I might it could be heartfelt. We'll see what comes out.
Lord willing, and if the creek don't rise, I will get sincere, thoughtful, reflective, contemplative answers from Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
There's always a first time.
First question. What best symbolizes Texas for you? The Alamo, the food, the weather, or the Wild West?
the probably the food. The Alamo. I've been to the Alamo.
Did you like it?
It was fine. I was more interested in the Mexican restaurants that were nearby. Um, but no, the Wild West. I mean, we live in a metropolis. The and so I'm not experiencing the Wild West unless I'm in my car. So probably the Mexican food, the barbecue, and that's what Texas is.
So for you, what is the draw for you related to the food, be it Mexican or barbecue? Let's touch on those two types of food because those are the two types of foods that are perhaps the most symbolic of Texas.
Well, it's more barbecue, honestly, because it's the wood. And I had an experience driving in the hill country with a really good friend. We had a car with the roof down,
Mm.
convertible. That's what they call them. And we were driving to a renowned barbecue place, and as we got closer, they had mesquite trees there, and so we
Mm.
could smell the trees, smell it in the air. And then we got there, and the smoke from there was the same smoke, and that's the essence of Texas barbecue, and that's why oak or mesquite, whatever it is, they don't do that anywhere because they don't have the wood, and that to me is a Texas memory that's pretty specific, but it definitely makes it difficult to leave. And I know we've left for a couple of years and we came back, and that was one of the one of the things among many. But that smell of the smoke is to me what captures Texas.
Now, it might be interesting for someone who does not live in Texas to take note of the fact that I said Mexican food and not Tex-Mex. The state is responsible for kind of a subcategory of food. Tex-Mex is it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like you're eating a secondary version of the real thing, which is just down the street. And so, you could go to Chili's or you can go to the taqueria just a couple of blocks down from Chili's and get a much better experience than the faux experience that you would get at Chili's. Again, not here knocking Chili's or On the Border or Chewy's or all the other kind of Tex-Mex places there are. But I think Mexican food for me, because I agree with you about the barbecue. And I was never a barbecue person before I moved to Texas. I didn't understand it. To me, you'll joke, this. I don't like messy foods, and I only associated barbecue with like a whole bunch of sauce and people constantly having to lick their fingers, and all this other thing. It's just an uncivilized way to consume sustenance. But, for me, Mexican food is like the Mexican version of Southern food. It's comfort food. And I think the smell of it, I think the setting of it, that's why I could never buy into Rick Bayless and his restaurants. He's got restaurants all over. He's a very famous Mexican chef. Well, he's not Mexican, but he's from America, but he cooks Mexican food. And he's very well world renowned as a chef of Mexican cuisine. But to me, a high tone, high price Mexican joint is a little bit like a high tone, high price Southern food joint. It doesn't make sense. It cuts out one of the most important components of the experience, and that is the experience of being there, the kind of simplicity of their surroundings, the simplicity of the plates, the simplicity of the supposed simplicity of the food. If you've ever tried to make mole, you know that it is not as simple as it looks. So I think the idea of the barbecue, I think the idea of the Mexican food to combine make this place pretty special.
Yeah, I don't think you can really get both. I mean, there are southern states that do really good barbecue, but you wouldn't have Mexican food there. Not on a bet, probably. But have both of those, it's pretty good. Um,
I remember
so
I was talking to someone who was originally from Toronto because my wife and I are considering going to Toronto next year.
You're going after the election?
A little bit afterwards. I don't want the
Okay.
two to
Okay.
be seen as correlating, but
Okay.
we're just going to visit. We're coming back.
Let's see.
But I, but I remember asking my friend. I said, "You have like any good restaurant recommendations in Toronto?" And he said, there's this great Mexican place. I said, well, first of all, that's ridiculous. I'm coming from Texas. I'm not going to go eat at a Mexican restaurant. It may be good, but it can't be as good as some of the stuff I've had down here. So it is rather symbolic of the state. And it's one of the things that makes the state special.
Yeah, we lived in Michigan for a year, in Ohio, and we couldn't find Mexican food. They didn't know what an enchilada was. I mean, they called it a wet enchilada if it had sauce on it, and you couldn't get tortillas. It was a mess, and when you're used to that, and the taqueria concept is, I agree with you. It's kind of the highest form because it's so direct, and
Mm.
it never disappoints. And the ambiance, and you're drinking those. I mean, when you and I go, you'll get a Coke, or what's the bottle called? Is it Dorito, or what's it called?
Jarritos.
Doritos, yeah. Which is, I mean, wouldn't be the same with a plastic bottle. It's a glass bottle,
Sure.
and yeah, but the whole experience, you're not going to get that too many other places, and
Mm.
and certainly combine that with barbecue. We're in rarefied territory here.
True. All right. So, question number two: what is the one thing that people outside of Texas don't get or don't know about the state? You have a lot of friends from all over the country, and of course, having lived in other parts of the country, how would you tackle that question?
Can I phone a friend or pass on that? Um, they just don't understand. They just don't get it. Uh, I'm not totally sure. I think there's a big difference between living in Dallas than living in West Texas or East Texas, or so. People are a little different culturally. There's a lot of culture here. Particularly in the bigger cities, incredible symphonies and museums, and I guess the high culture, maybe they don't know about, but we have world class museums, and musical ensembles, everything that you would get in other big cities. So Texas has a lot of variety, but it's kind of two states in one, because you have living in the city, and then out in the country. Country Texas is kind of different, than the quaint little eastern small towns that you grew up, driving through and visiting. It's just they're kind of sparse. I've never lived in one, so I don't really know the charm of them. But you go into a diner or something, have breakfast, and there's a coziness, comfort, and I think Texans are comfortable in their own skin, in general, and there's not awkwardness that you might see elsewhere.
I think the idea, I think you hit the nail on the head if it's your turn to do so. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about culture, because I do think that a lot of people see Texas as a rather homogenous entity, and they only think about Texas through a single prism. And yes, if you went out into far West Texas, or if you went out to rural Texas, you might find more homogeneity than you would find in the urban centers. But throughout Texas, we have a large, of course, we have a large Mexican population. We have a large Vietnamese and Thai population. We have a large Hmong population. I mean, there are different cultures from throughout the world that have made their way to Texas, and they have left their mark on Texas. And you talk about the original settlers, where you're talking about Germans or Czechs. These are folks that have shaped what parts of Texas look like. And I just don't think many people understand that.
So I didn't know about the Hmong population. Where is that? Is that in Dallas?
Well, it's both here and it's in the entire metroplex going up towards Denton. And
Okay.
so, for those who don't know, these are folks that are from the northern mountain areas of Laos. and they were supporters of the United States during the Vietnam War, which is one of the reasons a lot of them had to get out of Dodge after the communists took over, first in Vietnam and then throughout the Southeast Asian peninsula. So, yeah, I mean, and you also talk about the museums, and I think about the people I've seen speak. Everybody, people from different areas of endeavor, but some of the greatest museums. I mean, Fort Worth has two of the most world-renowned museums. Actually, three has three of the most world-renowned museums in the world. Talking about the Amon Carter, which focuses on American art, the Kimball, which focuses on European and world art, and then you have the modern. And so I think if you thought that Texas lacked this, I think it's something that you missed out on.
And certainly the Dallas Symphony is talked about, and in that short list,
Mhm.
of American symphonies.
So music, art, literature. I mean, you talk about we have our own book towns. Unfortunately, one of them has met an untimely demise with the death of Larry McMurtry. Archer City was a massive book town. So there's a lot here in Texas that I think people just don't expect and people just don't know about. And I think that gives them a skewed sense of what Texas really is.
No, we never went to Archer City, or at least together. Did you ever go?
I did. And what was interesting is that I remember in 2002 or 3, I received a scholarship to do a part of my master's studies at Oxford and
Oxford in England,
in
indeed.
England. Yes, not Mississippi, not Old Miss, but so when I went to Oxford, it just sounds so Tony to say that, but when I went to Oxford, um, I did some research on Earl Kekkonen, who was the former Finnish president throughout most of the Cold War. And it was one of those things where it's just such an obscure topic. And when I came back, I went to Archer City, and at Archer City, back in those days, there was like 5 massive bookstores. I mean, with just books from the floor to the ceiling and just different shelves. And I actually found his autobiography in English, which was very limitedly produced and published and printed rather. And I actually found his autobiography in English. And so I think one of the things I loved about Archer City was that you could find stuff like that. You could find things about all sorts of topics that you wouldn't think would be possible to find, not just in Texas, anywhere really.
So there's more here than meets the eye, is what you're getting at.
I think that's a fair assessment to make. So third
Okay.
question.
Okay. Let's hear the third. How many are there?
There are 5.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Just checking.
All right. What would you say are your 3 favorite places in Texas to be or to visit?
Well, a little pause there. I'm partial to universities where I'm paying lots of money, and I love being there. There's just something about Texas A&M campus, and I've been to football game there at Kyle Field, and my wife just whooped in the background. She's listening in. But there's no place like that, so that would be right there. I've grown fond of Baylor. When I go see my son do a concert, I'll walk the campus and avail myself of the library, and it's just a beautiful place. I would love to teach there someday if it works out. So those are pretty high. And you asked for 3.
Yes.
Um, well, I don't get around that much, but I do like the hill country. I'm not going to say Austin because I would get yelled at and hissed in the background. But before you get there in the hill country, and my in-laws live out there, and the trees and the rolling hills. I guess west of Waco is a beautiful place, and you have the bluebonnets like no one's ever seen. in that area. So I think those would be the top three if pressed.
It's interesting. I'm sure you've heard this before, but when I was overseeing the German exchange trip, and when I was participating in the German exchange trip as your second in command, as it were, I would often hear from German students that they were surprised at how green Texas was. I mean, I think most people have an image of Texas as perhaps more akin to El Paso, something a bit more desolate, a bit brown, not very colorful, both literally and figuratively. And I think that's most people's idea of Texas. But Texas is quite a green state, or at least about half of it is. And so when you drive through the hill country, you're driving through some of the prettiest pieces of landscape that you're likely to come across in the United States. I mean, it's just a gorgeous drive.
Really is. So is that on your list of three, Miller?
The hill country,
Well, you get three. I mean, you're waxing whimsical, but did it make the list?
for me, it wouldn't make the list. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that I love El Paso. I love the West. I love the desert. And so I think El Paso has to rank up there for me. I mean, it's right there on the Mexican border. There's this cool kind of relaxed mixing of cultures that exist there. Um, Not to mention some pretty damn good Mexican food. But just the history of it, Franklin Mountain Park there in the middle of the city, I think it's the largest urban parks in the United States. And just the surrounding areas, just the vibe of the place. And I will tell you, my love of El Paso started long before I had any idea of El Paso. For those of you who know this kind of music, my mother had Marty Robbins' Ballads of a Gunfighter, and one of the
Oh,
and it's a in the front, it's a red album, and it's a picture of Marty Robbins in complete black holding a pistol with a cowboy hat and looking like something's out of the Wild West. But one of the songs in it is you know it's the song El Paso, from the West Texas town of El Paso. I fell in love with a Mexican girl, and as a young kid, that song captured my imagination. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to go to El Paso so badly when I moved here, was because I wanted that. And really, you set yourself up for failure doing this, but you sit there and you hope that the modern incarnation of El Paso fits this highly romanticized idea that you have in your head that's based on a song and not meant to be real, exhaustive, conclusive, whatever the case may be. But I find that I really love El Paso. And so that would have to be on the top of the list, or near the top of the list,
okay. I never
or at
heard
least
that
top
song.
three. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'll have to look at that album now, at least the cover. I'll
Yeah.
listen to that song. Absolutely.
So
So what else?
second place would have to be Fort Worth,
Mhm.
because I think Fort Worth, you know, the old joke that if Fort Worth is where the West begins, Dallas is where the East peters out. There's a lot of reasons to make fun of Dallas. No reason to go through all of them here. But for me, Fort Worth has that combination of the West, of the culture. It's just a cool, can do kind of city. It is not typically held back by a lot of machine like politics that you might see in some of the larger cities. It's big, but it's not quite as soulless as Dallas or, say, Houston might appear to be. And it just has something to it that I really, really appreciate. And I think of course, I've lived here. I'm raising my daughter here, along with my lovely bride, who also takes part from time to time. But Fort Worth for me is this kind of magical place, and I really love being here. I love living here. I love telling to people, "Hey, come to Fort Worth. Skip Dallas. Come to Fort Worth, and enjoy everything that it has to offer." So that would probably be my second place. My third place would probably be San Antonio, because I think San Antonio kind of personifies the marriage between Texas culture and Mexican culture. And it does so in a rather easygoing sort of way. in the same way that El Paso can be said to do that. But they are kind of forced into it because they are forced into kind of a marriage separated only by the Rio Grande. For me, though, San Antonio, when you talk about the Alamo, although the Alamo is one thing, I mean, for those who have never been to San Antonio, you may not be familiar with the southern missions that are just south of town that are more incredible because they're more realistically situated. It doesn't have quite the tourism infrastructure that the Alamo does.
Not surrounded by the Riverwalk and
The
hotels.
Riverwalk, the restaurants, the
Right.
colors, the vibrancy,
Yeah.
the history, the food. I mean, there's a lot to love about San Antonio. And if I was going to create a top three list with no one in particular order, it would have to be El Paso, San Antonio, and Fort Worth.
Okay. I almost went with Fort Worth too. And I mean, we both lived there, and I spent a lot of time downtown when I was playing piano for about 20 years in those big, tall hotels. And you get a feel for it, and it's actually a real downtown where people can walk around. And I mean, some places I don't feel that Dallas has that, or you go downtown and it's not accessible. I think they really cleaned up the downtown of Fort Worth, quite a while back. So it's very safe and easy to navigate, easy parking. But yeah, there's something, it's hard to articulate what it is about Fort Worth, but it's real. It's simple, and it's probably the best we have in the state. I would agree.
So, a fourth question, and this comes from so I had a very unfortunate family incident in that my father's sister, who I had not spoken to in years, we had started to recommence communication a couple of years ago. And after about 6 months of just talking back and forth, exchanging emails and texts and things of that nature that remained fairly convivial, friendly, politics entered into the mix.
Boy,
And she could not understand how I could live in a state like Texas. And it's because she was only thinking of Texas through a political paradigm. I'm wondering, when you think of Texas, how little or how much do you think of the politics of the state?
actually, not that much. But I'm pretty isolated up here in the rarefied airs where we live. Um, yeah. But no, it doesn't. I mean, I felt the same thing going to Germany. They would always ask about, President Bush, for example, during that his tenure, and Donald Trump, and they would just say the name, and suddenly I'm defending Texas and the United States, and at, all at once over a casual conversation, and they'll just kind of stare at you, and I'm pretty good at talking around things and giving them less than nothing in the conversation.
Like a good politician.
That's right. But no, to me, it's not much of a concern.
Well, not so much a concern, just as far as how you experience Texas.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it's not in the equation, honestly.
mm.
Um,
And
and
beyond Germany, for example, friends and
uh,
family in Oregon or Michigan, this has not been a topic of conversation.
I think any state that consistently votes red or blue, they wonder how can you even live there, and that's not my approach to politics. I mean people can have all kinds of differences politically and still be great friends and
Mm.
respectful, and so I think it's a painting with a broad brush. If you define Texas by the color that they vote, and so I don't give it a lot of thought, honestly.
It is strange because I was raised in the bluest of
Mhm.
blue states,
Right.
and I currently live in one of the redder states in the country. And for me, I just don't look at people in that way. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that, and forgive the overused
No, I
expression
love it.
there.
Anytime you say I'm right, I like just keep going.
But I think, but when my aunt said, "How can you live there? How can you have a positive image about Texas?"
Yeah,
It's because politics is not part of my framework. I mean, I don't consider people based on their politics. And so, and I feel like I have a unique experience, and I think you do as well, in that we both grew up in very blue states,
right.
but we currently live in a very red state. And to me, it seems counterproductive to look at people simply as a political opinion or a political mindset. It just keeps you from talking to everybody. And I think we could all agree that the one thing we need more of is conversation, but you can't have it if you're only thinking politics.
No, I mean, a question about your own politics may be more direct, than talking about how could you live in a state. But I mean, you and I are similar in that we check boxes on both sides.
Mm.
It's not a real simple conversation. And but yeah,
It shouldn't be.
right. That's right. So that's unfortunate, but unfortunately, it's unfortunate that the whole country tends to be in these two camps, and they can judge a person by their state, which I think is pretty silly.
One of the things that I used to tell my students is that I thought that the biggest bad development in voting laws in this country was the emergence of the single vote ballot, where
Yeah,
basically you can just press one button
you vote
and
the per
it just clicks all the Republican or all the Democrats.
right.
It's the height of not only not thinking, but to encourage a lack of thinking,
Yeah,
because it makes no sense to think that way. It makes no sense to suggest that one side has all the answers and the other side is completely wrong about every single thing. That defies the human experience. And so for me, for people to think that way, I don't get it. And the same thing, I don't get thinking about people in that way. And that's why it's not a big part of my thought process when expressing my love for or affection for Texas or Texans.
yeah, and the idea that I mean, you could be voting for horrible people, stupid people unqualified with incredibly controversial views that you don't appreciate, but you're clicking a party line, whatever party it is. That's yeah. That I agree. It should be outlawed. Is that just a Texas thing, or is that a national thing now?
I don't know. Yeah, I know it's in Texas. I don't
Right.
know if it's to what extent it's in other states.
Yeah. Yeah. They need to
I can't imagine other states don't have it. Whether they all do, I don't know. Yeah, and no party has a monopoly on stupid people.
right.
There are stupid people on both
Well,
sides of the aisle, and they should be equally detested, or certainly equally discouraged from running for office.
well, this
So
could be our issue. We could, throw down on this one. It's pretty simple, and people would laugh at us like usual.
hopefully we give somebody something to think about.
That's right. If only that would be
If
great.
I can, if we can affect just one person.
If one person hmm,
All
makes it
right,
all worth.
last question,
Okay.
and it came up in the first question, but we didn't touch on it. So, what is worse, a Michigan winter or a Texas summer?
Oh, I just pause. I've gotten so used to the Texas summers, and we actually have really good air conditioning everywhere from our home to our car to the supermarket. It's downright cold, and yes, you don't see people walking around outdoors much. It looks like a bit of a ghost town. Kids aren't playing in the street and things like that, but you can handle that if the air conditioning is working. Up north, it's different. I mean, you remember it, but when you're close to a Great Lake, you get more than just the cold temperature and the snow. You get the moisture in the air that just cuts through.
You feel
Driving
it.
is
You feel it in your bones.
You do, and then we forget that the snowbanks aren't beautiful. They're muddy and nasty, and they don't leave. They're there for seems like forever. But it's hard to do, what we think are easy things like getting out of your car after work and going home.
Hmm.
You have to dig yourself out, and there's a lot of slipping and sliding, and no, it's not fun. So I think the Texas summers are much easier unless you're unfortunate enough to be outdoors working or God forbid living out, in the street or something. But for people who can afford to live here in their air conditioned cars and homes, no, the summers are just fine.
I love the cold. I've always loved the cold. It's one of the things I miss being in Texas. But I must tell you, I
Uh-huh.
find something purifying about the heat. I find something purifying about walking. I'll go out and work out sometimes in the sun.
Hmm.
I find something cleansing about the amount of sweat that you can generate walking 2 feet in July in Texas.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I must tell you, I really embrace the heat of the state. And some
Mhm.
people say I can't understand how you can handle it. I can't stand people in Florida. How do you handle that? Humidity plus hurricanes plus just random chickens and iguanas walking down the street. I mean,
Yeah, I
I,
wouldn't like any of that. But but the humidity is I mean, we're in a pretty dry part of Texas,
yes.
and so I think if we lived down in Houston or even farther near the water, that would the conversation would be it'd be a little closer decisions. I don't like humidity. I feel trapped and
Mhm.
don't like sweating all the time. But up here, it's a different story. But yeah, the I mean, you grew up in tough winters, and we're not as old as we or as young as we used to be. I mean, just walking out in the winter here, take out the trash, I come in complaining, thinking, nothing's ever been so cold. I don't know
Mhm.
how it's cold up north anymore.
It is interesting. You think about all the places you could live, and
Mhm.
all of them have a potential problem.
Right.
Whether you're talking about hurricanes in Florida, mosquitoes big enough to carry away small children, or whether you're talking about earthquakes in California or tornadoes in the Midwest. I mean, of course, Texas does have its share of tornadoes as well.
Right.
But it's just amazing of all the places that you can live in, the heat may be the easiest thing to deal with.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You just don't go out, but be indoors.
Never get out of the boat.
Yeah, I think that's it. So so it sounds like we love it here, and I'm always talking about moving, you know,
We
every
both
every
are.
every hour on the hour because I mean, we could do a whole episode on what's lacking here, um, and that
We
needs
could,
to be
but for me, I think it's important to say that I think me wanting to move has more to do with what else there is out there
right.
than what is here or
I
what is
agree.
not here.
And there's a book by Sigmund Freud, Civilization and Its Discontents. And as soon as we moved from here, we would look back and say, boy, we had it pretty good. We need to get back there. It wouldn't take long.
Everyone wants to get back to eating, and so
Yep. That's right. Boy.
so to kind of wrap things up,
Yeah.
and this is not a part of the official questions, but let's go ahead and
Oh,
throw it out there.
all right.
Because one of the things that tends to annoy non-Texans is the mythologizing of Texas. And whether we're talking about the Alamo, whether we're talking about everything is bigger in Texas, whether we're talking about don't mess with Texas, all of these things that are a part of a kind of a self-aggrandizement that Texans tend to do for themselves. Um, to what degree do you like that? Do you even pay attention to it or do you dislike it? I mean, how do you respond to stuff like that? Do you buy into it?
I don't take it personally because, I mean, if you're not born here, you're probably not a Texan, and we sure don't sound like Texans. Uh, and that's not our background. So I don't think we earn the right to even be offended by that.
I must say I kind of like it. I kind of
Oh,
like it. I think any place that mythologizes its history,
yeah.
even if they get it wrong, I just think the idea of focusing on history sometimes I can appreciate a place that does that, and And if they're not always spot on, then well, God bless them, or as they say in tech, they say in the South, bless their hearts. But for me, that can be worked with. A person who's ambivalent about their own history, ain't much you can do about that. And so I don't have as much of an issue with that component of Texas, but
Well, I like the line of questioning. I was incredulous at first, wondering, where is this headed, and is it going to be really uncomfortable with these pauses and thinking and um, maybe bickering a little bit. But I think we handle this pretty well here, Miller.
a very dignified conversation,
That's right.
the latest of many.
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
I thought today was the episode where we had guests, and so I was on my best behavior, and then suddenly it was just the two of us.
Sometimes that's all you need.
That's right.
All right. So with that, we shall say adieu and hopes of warmer temperatures soon. I shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.